Hello and welcome to podcast 43 from Football-Oranje, your home of Dutch football. I'm Michael Statham and I'm with James Rowe and Michael Bell to discuss the latest news in Dutch football, including Euro 2020 draw for the Netherlands, Frenkie de Jong at a potential transfer to PSG, the Eredivisie, its title race, the relegation battle, Ajax face Bayern Munich in the Champions League, the Netherlands women have their World Cup draw known, and we answer any questions that you have regarding anything Dutch football. We hope you enjoy. We're available on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes and Football Nation Radio in Australia. I think the first topic we should talk about this week, James and Mike, is Euro 2020. We now know who the Netherlands are going to get in Group C, and the top two will qualify going through to the Euro 2020 finals. And the Netherlands have been drawn with arch rivals Germany, who they've just recently had in the Nations League and beat them at home and drew away, but also Northern Ireland, Estonia and Belarus. What do we make of the chances then of getting out of that group?
I think the chances are very good. I think once the Germany name came out first, it seemed a bit of an inevitability given the fact that Netherlands have had a couple of tough draws in the past few tournaments, and you're looking at teams that they could have got from the other pots, and you've got to say that it was quite generous after that. I know Republic of Ireland were drawn out, but they couldn't get put into the draw because it would have been three host nations. I think that was a bit lucky. I think they're a bit better than what Northern Ireland are at the moment. I know that they've had some good results over the past few years under Michael O'Neill, but I think they're a nation that's struggling at the moment. I don't think they got a single point in the Nations League. I think other than that, you'll get Estonia, Belarus, teams that Netherlands should be beating home and away. I think it just comes down to really the crucial games will be home away against Germany and away against Northern Ireland. If you beat Northern Ireland away, you're guaranteeing yourself probably second place, and then it's just between the home and away games in Germany, and then Netherlands will go into those games with full of confidence because we beat them at home 3-0 and then we drew away in the Nations League. I don't think Germany will ever be that bad again. I think they'll have improved by then, but I think Netherlands right now can give them a good game.
I think they can be pleased with the draw. I think their undoing and failure to qualify for the last two major tournaments has been specifically away from home, and I think going to Tallinn and to Belfast and to Minsk, I think they're all doable assignments, and as Mike says, they should have great confidence to win both home and away. But I think not just Belfast, the game against Northern Ireland. I think away in Tallinn as well. Estonia have their moments at home, and where they play well in patches. But I think if they remain professional, I think there's no reason why they can't qualify for their first major tournament since 2014. And I think they can. I think they can be pleased with how the draw's panned out.
Yeah, and on the whole, it's with the whole more teams being able to qualify for Euro 2020, it does make it a little bit kinder on the Netherlands. But we have to take a step back and think. Well, last time we said about how easy it was to qualify for the World Cup last time. Not so much easy, but a comfortable draw. Could we see a bit of complacency from the Dutch again? They've been guilty of it in the past. We know that there's a playoff backup option if they fail to qualify for the group stages. Is it likely to happen again? These smaller teams will really want to be on their top form when they play Netherlands and Germany. So is there a chance of a surprise where they don't qualify again?
I think it's unlikely. I think, as we all know only too well, the backdrop to how the failure to qualify for Euro 2016 and the World Cup in 2018 played out with the instability in terms of manager and uncertainty at board level at Camper Bay. That's not there now, and they've also got a manager who's improved the squad in such a short space of time, making them competitive again where they've gone on to reach the final four of the Europa League. So there are signs of life. I think with the professionalism of Koeman in particular and his determination, I can't imagine we'll see complacency this time round. I think it will be a shock much more sizable than the previous two where they never qualified, for them to miss a third major tournament in a row. I think it's highly unlikely, and I think the backup option as well of having the playoff should it go awry in the qualification, they have the backup option of a playoff at the very last knock-ins of that. So it would take a hell of a huge period of bad results to ensure they'd miss a third major tournament in a row.
Yeah, I agree with James. I think you look at the players' comments after the Nations League, and even Koeman himself. He gets the comments like, "You've beaten France, you've beaten Germany. That's great, isn't it?" He's like, "Well, that means nothing because we've not qualified for Euro 2020 yet. That's been his main goal this whole time." And even the players have been saying that the main goal is to get to Euro 2020. I think that's their main focus. And I think the draw has just been a bit kinder this time than in the recent years. Sweden weren't an easy side. You saw it at the World Cup; they did okay. That Northern Ireland aren't to that level. Then you've got Bulgaria away where Netherlands slipped up, that cost them crucially. Estonia and Belarus aren't to that level. So I think this draw gives Netherlands a great chance of reaching the tournament, and I can't see them holding out for a playoff spot, because it's likely that if they did get a playoff spot, the teams that they would face in that would be much harder than, say, Northern Ireland.
On the topic of the Dutch national team then, I think this is a really great question that was sent in. Please, everyone, please keep sending in your questions each time we do a podcast. We do appreciate them. Ryan has put in this question: is the national team too reliant on the presence of Frenkie de Jong and Memphis Depay to succeed?
I think it might appear that way at the minute, but I think Koeman will make sure that that's not the case going forward. Because you can't harbour aspirations to qualify for a major tournament for the first time in 6 years, being over reliant on two very young players. I think it appears that case. I think it appears that way at the moment because both of them are so much in form. I think Koeman will deliberately change things around going forward to make sure he's got options tactically and also in personnel, so that they can make a positive impression at Euro 2020. I think that's what it's all being built to, and as Mike's alluded to in previous podcasts as well, they've still got to get their striker role sorted out, because there may be times in qualification games or even at tournament level, or maybe even in the Nations League next summer, where the lack of a killer instinct penalty box striker may well be their undoing. So I think Koeman will keep everybody sharp. I think it's a great question. I agree, but I think it appears that way at the moment, primarily due to how well both Depay and De Jong are playing. Really,
I think you could say that Netherlands' national team has definitely improved because of both of them. But I wouldn't say we're over reliant on either of them. I think you'd see an impact if, say, Virgil van Dijk and Matthijs de Ligt were both injured for a game. I think the quality in the squad will go down. I think there's just several good players in the squad now, and I think that the inclusion of De Jong and the form of Memphis through the middle have just improved that. But I think there's options from the bench. We saw it in the game against Germany away. Tony Vilhena came on, Luc De Jong came on, and both of them changed the game. So I wouldn't say that Koeman doesn't have options, but it's great to have Memphis and Frenkie de Jong because they're two outstanding players.
Yeah, that's a good answer, Mike. And I think actually, if you look at any good team in the world, if you take away their best 1, 2, 3, 4 players, of course they're going to be worse off for it. And I like the answer too about how actually they're adding to the quality. I think if Frenkie de Jong was injured, the national team wouldn't suffer from that. But I would argue that should Memphis Depay be injured, then there would be a few issues in the attack. And I disagree with you, James. I think Depay is crucial to play in that forward role as a striker. It really suits the system because he starts off all of his attacking moves. And I don't think anyone has that same mobility, but also the same killer instinct in the box as Depay. There isn't a Dutch striker at the moment that can offer that quality in terms of build-up and finishing that Memphis does. So a question came in from City Till I Die, and he asks, do you think Frenkie de Jong to Manchester City will happen? Because there's been a lot of talk at the moment about is PSG going to be de Jong's destination? It won't be in January, we know that for sure, he's confirmed that. But in the summer, is he looking for a move? Is he going to stay for another year? He's said that even he doesn't know yet, but there has been a lot of rumours this week, strong rumours from reliable sources suggesting that a €75 million move to PSG is on its way. But yeah, this question came in from City Till I Die. Will it happen that he actually goes to Man City? Could he go to Barcelona instead?
I'll be amazed if he goes to City. I think, I've said it before on a couple of pods as well, not just De Jong but also De Ligt. I think they're really going to surprise us with their eventual choice, because they're not just two. Or in the case of De Jong, he's a tremendous talent. You know, he's come on leaps and bounds. I mean, you got to remember as well, it's only 3 years ago since he signed for Ajax from Willem II, and he's made tremendous strides in such a short space of time, and to have such a presence on the pitch at such a young age is very impressive. But I think he knows himself that he needs to go somewhere where he's going to play every single game. There is no point in him leaving Ajax to go and sit on a bench, play Champions League dead rubbers, play 15 minutes here, play 15 minutes there. He needs to further his development, to improve even more. He's got to choose a team where he's going to a stronger league, where he's going to play every single game, and that may appear to be quite difficult, but I think he's going to be quite shrewd with his choice. I think the rumours this week, the way they've taken off, it just goes to show that people reporting in this industry, you've really got to know what you're talking about. You've really got to say what it's all about. As someone who interviews professional players and managers on a regular basis the last 2.5 years, I wouldn't dare deal in hearsay. All my quotes from the interviews, past and present, are all bang on the money. Otherwise I wouldn't have them published. But naturally, in an industry like journalism, where people want to get the rubber to green and they want to be known for breaking the news first, I think that's overtaking a little bit. But I don't think De Jong will go to City. I'm unsure about the Paris Saint-Germain link, because I wonder if he's going to play. But not just the regular playing time at Paris Saint-Germain. You look at the lead that Paris Saint-Germain have got already in Ligue 1. Is that really going to be conducive to Frenkie de Jong's development? I'm not so sure. If I was him, it's just my opinion, if I was him, I'd entertain overtures from Bayern Munich, or going to Spain and starting off at maybe a Sevilla, like Lenglet at Sevilla was a tremendous defender. Barcelona brought him from Sevilla. There's no reason why De Jong can't follow the same path, going to the arguably the strongest league in the world, playing home and away games on a regular basis and improving. But I think the question, I'd be amazed if he went to Manchester City, in all honesty.
For me, I think there isn't smoke without fire, and I think the Telegraph haven't just gone with hearsay for this story. I think there's definitely some credibility behind it. There's definitely a meeting in Amsterdam between the PSG officials and Overmars. None of them are denying that these talks are taking place and they're not seeing the moves close. De Jong says nothing's finalised yet, and I think that for me, I'd be surprised now if he didn't go to PSG. I think just the news story that's broke out, I think that it looks certain. I think that Manchester City have pulled out, whether that's because of the stuff going on with the financial fair play issues that they've got. We'll see what happens if, say, they get cleared of all charges, and then maybe they could make a late move. 75 million is nothing for them. It's nothing for PSG, but I just wonder, with, say, a club like Barcelona, are they more interested in getting De Ligt than De Jong? Both of them are very expensive players. If De Jong's going to go for 75 million, De Ligt's going to go for about 60, 65. And it looks like Barcelona are more interested right now in De Ligt. I think, in terms of PSG being a good club for De Jong, I think it is. I think they're not paying 75 million for a bench player. Rabiot is going to go in the summer. I think that De Jong will slot straight into their midfield. He's playing with world-class players. You got to think of Frenkie de Jong, his passing range. What's he going to do with Mbappe? Them two could form a real clique, and that could be, the difference between PSG being a great side and one that challenges for something like a Champions League title. I think he'll slot into that midfield. I think he's going to be playing under a great manager in Thomas Tuchel. I think he will improve in the French league, even though some call it a farmers league. But you got to look at the Champions League this year. Lyon gave Manchester City 2 great games. PSG are doing well. I think that the people that call the French league a smaller league are people from England who think the Premier League is the best league in the world, and they'd probably say the same about the Bundesliga as well.
But that's ignorance a lot of the time, Mike. that ignorant, that it's just pure ignorance at the end of the day. From my point of view as well, I'm not disagreeing the fact to play alongside the likes of Mbappe and the great players that Paris Saint-Germain have, but the dominance of Paris Saint-Germain, that's not going to continue forever, ever and a day. That will come to a head, not soon. When I say sooner rather than later, I'm not talking about next season, but it was in the early 2000s where I think Lyon won 7 league titles in a row, and everyone said, "Oh, that's that Lyon forever and a day." But things can change very quickly in football, and I think given the commanding lead that Paris Saint-Germain already have. Where they don't struggle at Champions League level, but the lack of competitivity they have at domestic level sometimes can stunt them at European level, and I think it will be a shame for De Jong to have to not put up with that, but to, for example, if he was to go to La Liga, for example, you'd get tested week in, week out, and I think that would help his development more than Liga. But that's just my personal opinion.
There are loads of variables to consider in this whole transfer, and I personally am in favour of him moving to PSG because I think he would actually get minutes. I think playing with all of these quality forwards is going to develop him as a player. I agree with Mike in that respect. I also agree with James that you don't want to be going to a Man City or a Barcelona as you probably won't get minutes on the pitch. But PSG, I think, will be looking for that kind of midfield player that they can take a risk and play him in the league because they are that much better than the rest of the teams in the league, so it's not really a risk to then play De Jong. You have to consider how much of a quality player he is as well. He would not be able to place in that side. And also, the competitiveness of League 1. The league could change, as you said, James. It could well change that in 2 or 3 years' time they could have a different complexion. There could be challenges to PSG. But already he's playing in a league where there's teams better than the others, and the Ligue 1 is a step up from that, and you do have better teams to play against. Is he just going for the Champions League, though? You could argue that maybe he is, but I think he'll be looking to play with the likes of Mbappe and Neymar. There's a reason why Neymar's gone. It is because of the money, but also they have the Champions League and that competitiveness. They win every season. Neymar is a player that can be treasured and praised, and he can be loved in that team. Same for De Jong. He will be made into a very good player in that 11. And then if it goes well for him 2 or 3 years down the line, he may get an even bigger transfer to one of the absolute best teams in Europe.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think a couple of years at PSG, I think Barcelona will still be circling him. And I think, like the likes of Real Madrid, in a couple of years' time, if Frenkie de Jong develops the way we all think he is, then he's going to be a Galactico in Real Madrid's eyes. The big clubs aren't going to go away if he goes to PSG, and he's still only 21. He's still got his whole career ahead of him, and I think PSG is a good move for now. And then we'll see if the Barcelona, Man Cities, and Real Madrid's come in 3 or 4 years' time.
Well, talking about all of these rumours, then we had a question from Ajax Almaty, and he wants to know if all of these rumours surrounding these young Ajax players is creating a pressure not only on the players themselves, but on the management side of Ajax.
I don't think so. I think if you look, the proof is in the pudding. Into the last 16 of the Champions League, they'll give any of the opponents in the last 16 a game. They're not out for the count for a place in the quarterfinals. I think that's perfectly feasible. I think specifically at home, it will be a real cauldron. And also as well, they're trying to hunt down PSV, and I mean, me and Mike disagree on this, but I think Ajax will catch them. And I think everybody's buying into the ethos of Ten Hag. I think he's done very well in all this. He was there was times last season when I remember being at the Ajax Den Haag match when it was 0-0, and there was chants of this is terrible, we can't have this. And then fast forward a season, into the last 16 of the Champions League, whilst being in a very difficult group. No, I think everybody's content, everybody's happy, and I think the best is yet to come. The only pressure I think is coming from board level, where ideally they want Ajax to win something of note this season, primarily the Eredivisie. But I think 4 years without a title, this is I think the pressure is coming from board level a little bit, perhaps, in terms of winning an actual trophy.
Yeah, I think you saw last summer Hakim Ziyech was linked heavily with a move that fell through. He's he's dealt with it excellently. He's playing his best. De Ligt's been linked to clubs for years. He's still great. And then if you look at Frenkie de Jong this week, you could have said that he might have had an off game against PEC Zwolle if his head was turned, but arguably he had one of his best games this season. And then afterwards he says, I thought all eyes of Europe were on me, so I felt I had to perform, and he did. And he was probably the best player on the pitch for Ajax. So I don't think it's affected him at all. I think if anything, it's spurring them on.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's doing totally the opposite, and it's spurring them on. You play for teams like Ajax to get that move above, don't you? You really try to kick on your career, and that pressure is a good thing for them. They love it. That's why they're, again, a club like Ajax, because of all of the pressure you get from supporters to win every single match and by a good margin as well. And speaking of transfer rumours, Jordan would like to know if there are any Eredivisie January transfer windows with any substance. And just as far as I know, I've only heard of outgoings rather than incomings, especially the top 3 clubs. But I wonder if you guys have heard anything.
The only one of note that I can divulge is the rumours gaining momentum that FC Utrecht are looking at Frans Sol as a striker. Apart from that, I haven't heard too much. I think rumours and links will gain momentum in the next couple of weeks, just as the transfer window is about to open. But I think it'd be interesting. But I don't know about you guys, but I've never been a fan of the January transfer window. I think for me, it serves only the purpose of players that are wanting to get a loan move that are not involved in first team squads in a particular season. And I'm not a huge fan of the window, to be honest. And I hope January comes and goes very quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be a strange one this year. I don't think you've got to wonder what sort of players are going to go in January. I think Ajax players will all want to stay, because of, the Women's Champions League knockout rounds. I don't think there's anyone at PSV that's really going to go. I think Steven Bergwijn is at the top of his game right now, but I think he's more likely a summer move. The only club I really look at is Feyenoord. It's about time that Tony Vilhena decides that if he wants to go somewhere else, and he was linked to England this week. I think Tottenham. I think he's a player that can only improve by finally going abroad. I think he's done as much as he can really at Feyenoord. I think he needs to make his next step. And then there's somebody like Nikolai Jorgensen. Is there going to be like another Premier League middle club that's going to panic and try and pay 20 million for this forward? The same could happen with Frans Sol. A club could panic and pay over the odds for these players. We just need to wait and see. There's nothing really concrete at the moment, but I think towards the end of the month we're going to see a lot more. Most of it will be a load of rubbish, because players will be leaving in the summer, not in January, but there will be a couple of players that might go, and I think Feyenoord will be the team to watch.
Yeah, it's quite a typical affair in the Netherlands that teams don't really make transfer moves in January, as they like to plan in the summer for the whole season. I guess they're more prudent than teams across the sea. But from rumours that I've heard, PSV are looking to shift Ismail Mira. Behic might be going back to Turkey. And Bart Ramselaar might get a move. And I suspect that he probably would take a transfer or a loan move to another Dutch club rather than move abroad. But we'll see on that one.
He needs one, because when he signed from Utrecht, it was PSV got him for an absolute steal. Utrecht sold him for far too little money, and he's been capped by his country. He played in a friendly game against Belgium back in Amsterdam, and there's definitely potential specifically with Ramselaar. And I hope that he chooses wisely. I think I agree with you, Michael. We would favour staying in the Netherlands rather than going abroad, because he needs to get back into playing to game time. He needs to get back to playing regularly, because when he does hit form and when he's content, he can really do a job. And I just think he's lost an awful lot of confidence very quickly as well. So I think be interesting to see who he chooses. Should he get his move? But I think it's a move that's definitely needed for him.
Yeah, I agree. Ramselaar's a good player on his day, but he's really lost his way.
Yeah, he's lost an awful lot of confidence.
I wonder if we'll see any clubs make moves for young players in preparation for next season. You do tend to see that if a club's going to be losing one of their best players, they do tend to pick up a young player at this point in time to prepare them for the next season. So that's another thing to look out for. But apart from that, I suspect it to be quite a quiet January transfer window, including for the teams that are down the bottom of the Eredivisie. They all tend to stick with what they've got, maybe pick up a few loan players from the bigger clubs. But as it stands, we're nearly halfway, and there are really some clubs struggling down the bottom of the Dutch league. We have NAC Breda sitting at bottom of the table. De Graafschap are down there. Groningen are still down there after a poor start. They've picked some points now. PEC Zwolle, after doing so well last season, as well as Emmen, Excelsior, Ardo, and then I guess the rest looking up probably will be safe coming towards the end of the season. But I wanted to get Mike, James, your thoughts on who you think will be in the most danger in the coming months.
Ooh, I hope I'm wrong, but I think De Graafschap. I think Emmen are not out of it yet, and since the appointment of Danny Bels, I've never been completely convinced about Groningen, to be honest. As we know, things can change very, very quickly. I think Excelsior, given the experience that Poldervaart had, has done a very good job, really, because he was written off before he started and he's currently sitting in 13th position. As we know, normally relegation goes to the wire, and if I look at the table now, I would say up to and including maybe Willemsvee in 11th. I think any of those teams could be in danger. I think Fortuna Sittard have had a tremendous start to the season. You know, to be 10th after 15 games is fantastic. And although Venlo have lost their last 2 games, I can't see them going on a terrible run that they had last season, where they only just about stayed up. You know, in terms of loss of form. But I think the 3 that I would say will be in the mix come the end will be De Graafschap, Groningen, and Emmen, I think.
Well, for me, the big one with Mr. Bottom of the table, NAC Breda, I think they look pretty hopeless at the moment. I don't know really how they're going to change things, really. Just their whole squad, I think, looks weak at this level. They're already 6 points off 16th place. You know, are they really going to get 3, 4, 5 wins after the winter break to really get them safe? I don't see it. I think PEC Zwolle and Groningen, they've both got enough talent to see them climb up, especially Groningen. You have Ritsu Doan, who's an exceptional player in my eyes. I think he'll be a much bigger club next year. I think they've got enough. Mamoun Mai's coming into form again. I think they'll eventually steer themselves away, and I think they'll be closer to the top 10. But for me, the bottom 2, I think, will stay what they are now. NAC Breda and De Graafschap, I think they'll be the bottom 2. And then I think Emmen or Excelsior, I think either of them 2 will get sucked into the last playoff spot.
I'm in agreement with you on this one, Mike. I think NAC Breda are in big trouble, but they probably will just about survive bottom spot, as I think De Graafschap will eventually slip to that position. Really poor defensively, and just playing 5 at the back isn't really helping them in the attacking sense either. So I'm not sure they'll have enough there. And as for the 3rd position, I think that'll be open to a whole host of clubs, which you've already mentioned. Groningen, for me, will be very safe. I think Doan and Mahi will bring the goals. PEC Zwolle, as you said, Mike, plenty of talent. I think you're looking at either Emmen, who, simply because of the quality in their squad, a good team that will fight to the end, I'm sure, and Excelsior, who are just conceding far too many goals. They've conceded 40 goals this season, and that's more than any other side in the Eredivisie at the moment. So I think it's either looking between Emmen or Excelsior for that final relegation position, but it's very early in the season. We won't know what's going to happen, and that's just my prediction.
I think it will go to the final day. I'd be surprised if it didn't. And you know, it could even go down. It could even come down to goal difference. I mean, we know ourselves how quickly things can change, and you know, about even managerial changes. I mean, they could come afoot if clubs feel the need to make a change. There could be a masterstroke done by one of the clubs which sees them rise out of the relegation zone. So an awful lot can change. But I would say at the moment, I think De Graafschap, Groningen and Emmen are the 3 that I would say are looking to be in trouble.
Okay, well, we should talk briefly about the Ajax v Bayern Munich game coming up in the Champions League. Ajax will be the only Dutch side left in European competition after Christmas. Better than last season when we had no one. Let's hope then that they could perhaps get to the knockout stages and kick on. But they've already qualified, and this final game at home to Bayern Munich could see them, if they win, pip them to top spots. Predictions for the game?
For me, I think I'm wondering how. I've not seen any announcement yet, but I'm wondering how bad the injury for Andre Onana was. He came off the pitch. I think if he's missing, then for me, Bayern become favourites. But if they have him back in goal, I think it'll be a tight game. I think you saw it in Germany. Ajax did really well to get a draw. I think they'll go into this game full of confidence, but you're missing Dolberg, you're missing possibly Onana, maybe Donny van de Beek, and maybe Hakim Ziyech. I mean, that's 4 players that would be probably starting the game if Ten Hag had his full squad. So I'm just waiting to see how badly affected he is by injuries, but I expect it to be a close game. Ajax have done themselves tremendously proud so far in the Champions League. They've reached the knockout stages, and the top spot will just be a bonus at this stage. And I'm hopeful. I think it'll be a tight game, but if those players are injured, I'm going to go for like a 2-1 Bayern win.
I think it'll be a draw. My prediction is 2-2. I was at the Ajax Benfica match back in October, and the fans, they've been an absolute credit to themselves for all home games, but specifically in Europe this year. Even the game against Sturm Graz, it was a real raucous atmosphere even in the qualifiers, and I think the fans will play a big role. They're making Young Arena a fortress for any European side, and I think that the fans will really get behind them, and I think that Ajax will give Bayern a go. And I don't think Bayern will be too fussed about the going all out to win the game. Hence why I think it's going to be a draw, and then Ajax go through second. But I think it should be a tie where Ajax shouldn't fear Bayern. I mean, they were written off in Munich, and when I stated that it would be a draw in Munich, everyone said, "Oh, you're mad." But what happened? It was a draw, and I think Mike made a great point earlier on in this pod about specifically Premier League fans and the ignorance as regards to other leagues and everything. Europe is completely different. Europe is tactically is different. The whole atmosphere is different. The small little nuances, and I think some people can fail to see that at times. I think Ajax being at home, I think it will be like the last hurrah from the fans for how well they've done in this European campaign, specifically in this group stage. And my prediction is a 2-2 draw.
I think it will be a close game, and it just purely depends on how Bayern Munich see the game, how much effort they want to put into it to claim that top spot themselves. But when you look at the teams that are currently sitting second in their respective groups, you would hope that Ajax finish top of this group to meet these sides, such as Tottenham at the moment. You might be looking at a Schalke, a Lyon or Roma, rather than playing Juventus, Real Madrid, Manchester City or a Barcelona, for example. So it's quite a big deal to try and qualify top of this group.
Michael, I would say as well that at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, if you harbour ambitions to win, to make progress in such a competition, and you've got to remember as well, when the draw is made on the 17th of December, these matches are being played in February. That's an awful lot of time in between, and I believe personally you can't plan a route, especially in a Champions League or a Europa League. I think regardless of who they play, should Ajax finish second, they should fear nobody in the last 16. They won't. They shouldn't fear anybody. I mean, obviously you've got Juventus and Atletico Madrid and those types of teams that have got that real killer instinct. But specifically at home in Amsterdam, in the last 16, they will give anybody a game.
I disagree. I think you have to look a bit more prudently in terms that Ajax are not going to reach a final of this competition. And I think if they have harbouring hopes of trying to reach the quarterfinals, for example, which is a huge deal in terms of finance and in terms of coefficient points for the country, in terms of Ajax's reputation, in terms of Ajax's coefficient points, I think reaching the quarterfinals, itself is already a huge, huge achievement for the club. And I think they would rather face a Lyon than a Manchester City.
But who's to say Lyon won't put them out? As I say, you can't plan these types of games. These games that are two-legged ties. It's 180 minutes. And when the draw is made, people will have assumptions of, we'll have them, that'll be all right, that'll be fine. And then when you come to the game in February, you've got maybe a managerial change, you've got a January transfer window behind you, you've got a club in form, for example. And for me, they just have to take who they get and take it from there. I firmly disagree about plotting your way through, because when you try to do those things, it will come back to bite you in the bum most of the time, to be honest.
Okay, we'll have to agree to disagree on that one. We must move on, and we must talk about the Women's World Cup draw. Really exciting news that this summer the 11s have been drawn in a group along with New Zealand, Cameroon and Canada for the competition that happens in France between June and July. What do we make of the draw for the women's side, and do they have a realistic chance of reaching far into this competition or potentially even winning it, bearing in mind they already won the Euro competition previously?
I think they can take great heart from the fact they're reigning European Euro 2017 title holders, and they should go into this tournament full of confidence. I think it's a good draw. I think there's already rumblings about who they could face in the latter stages, maybe England, but there's so much quality in that squad. There's a real togetherness in that squad. Having interviewed many of the winners of Euro 2017, which listeners can go back and check on Football-Oranje, with the likes of Danielle van der Donk and Jackie Groenen and Shalida Spitzer, among others. They're all so proud of what they achieved, and there was such togetherness that they were always looking to take the next step and make a play to become world champions. It's a goal they've had for a long time. There's a settled side there. There's a settled setup, and I see no reason why they can't give it a really good go. And I think they must be among the favourites to win the competition.
Yeah, I agree. I think looking at the draw, it could have been much tougher. It could have been very much harder. Canada are probably the best side in it, like rankings wise, they're fifth in the world. But then you look at Netherlands' squad and who they've got. It's full of talent. It's the reigning European champions. They were a bit shocked that they didn't automatically qualify. They had to go for the playoffs, but they eased through the playoffs. I think they're one of the best sides, and I don't think they should fear anyone in this group. And then we'll see what happens in the knockout rounds. I think it's going to be a great summer with Netherlands men in the Nations League, and then the Netherlands women at the World Cup. And who knows, Netherlands women could be the first Dutch side to bring home the World Cup, and let's all hope for that.
That will be a fantastic summer. When I spoke to Daniet Kirkdijk, a Dutch women defender based in Bristol City, women, she was really confident of winning this competition, having won the Euros. She said, yeah, of course we can. And, if the squad have that confidence, then that's great. And I think that the style of football they play, it's the traditional Dutch way. And I think that really helps them in playing other sides. I think that the style really helps how they play, and it does beat a lot of teams. So it'll be really exciting to see, and we look forward to the fixtures in early June.
As I say, I think they've got a tremendous chance, and also as well, that having spoke to quite a fair few players that were part of that victorious Euro 2017 side, they're also amazed about what they achieved together, and it was providing a base to go and do something like this. And for me, it's no surprise at all to hear them say, and like you just said about Kirkdijk as well, about the expectation and the want to win it. For me, that's only a good thing. You've got to enter these tournaments with belief. They've already proved they can win at an extremely high level, and for the majority of them, this is the next step, which they've been preparing for quite some time.
All right, now we've got a couple of questions just to end this week's podcast. And the first one comes from Alan, and he says, have you guys been seeing Anwar El Ghazi's emergence in recent games at Aston Villa? Is there any chance of a call-up for the Netherlands if his form persists? I hope that's okay if I can answer this question first of all. Being a Villa fan, I've been watching him play.
Of course, you're the expert.
Got to be the expert on this one. Yeah, he hasn't been playing a lot at Aston Villa, El Ghazi. He's only really just come into the fold now. I suppose when we first signed him in August, September, he was getting a few games and he had an amazing start. But since then, he fell out of the team entirely under Steve Bruce. The new manager's come in, and I think his new training regimes has helped bring El Ghazi back into the fold. It did take a while. He was on the bench for quite a few games. But since he started to get that chance, he seized it with both hands. And my God, his performance against West Brom, man of the match, and by far away the best player on the pitch. And if he can keep that up, then he's too good for the Championship. 2 goals, full of skills. You could just see that he's a massive confidence player. And when he's happy, then he will perform. As for the Dutch national team, not at the moment. I think he's still far from it. But let's see how his season goes with Aston Villa. If he can get promotion with them, then I think he'll have a good chance of getting a bigger move or maybe a permanent deal with Aston Villa. And then that's kind of see how it goes from there. But it was just nice to see El Ghazi reliving some of that form that he had with Ajax that got him a call-up to the Dutch national team a few years ago. And if this El Ghazi's back, then that's just another addition to the wings of the Dutch national team.
Yeah, it's good to see that he was around a time where there was a lot of excitement around some of the Dutch talents. Kind of parallel to what there is now. There was El Ghazi, there was Kishna, there was Bazour in midfield, and I think all 3 of them have sort of disappeared from prominence. And it's good to see one of them finally rediscovering some of their form, and hopefully, once Bazour sorts himself out at Porto and maybe can get some game time, he can come back, and then we'll see what Ricardo Kishna can do when he returns from injury at ADO Den Haag.
Yeah, it was like a lost generation, that bunch of Ajax players that came through and were really exciting. But I think a mixture of attitude and actually the lack of quality in the Dutch top division at the time might explain why they look so good. A mixture of those two things, perhaps, especially with El Ghazi, as he's a very good player, but at the time he looked like a world beater in the Ajax team, and really I didn't think he was all that world class.
I think he's very much a confidence player, and I think it's good to see him playing well for such a big club, because Aston Villa are a very big club. I think in regards to Dutch national team, I agree with you, Michael. I think if he was to get promotion with Aston Villa, or in any case show that he's playing well in the top flight of a specific league, whether that be England or France, for example. Remember, he had a spell at Lille. I think if he ends up playing well in the top flight of a specific league, I think Koeman would look at him and maybe invite him in for a squad should he continue to play really well, to give another option. But I think at the level he's in at the moment, I think it would be highly unlikely that Koeman would look to pluck players from that particular level.
Yeah, even if he was playing well, I think Koeman would probably have to look at the likes of Huddersfield's Rajiv van der Parra first, and I don't think he's good enough for the Dutch national team. So you can see that the players he probably would want to look at first before he'd look at El Ghazi, purely because of the level he's playing at. He can look great because of the teams he's playing against. I think the final question that we've had this week was from Jordan. He's already asked one this podcast, and he asks, Sparta Rotterdam winning 6-1 the other day. Do we fancy them for promotion because of how well they're doing in the Eredivisie?
They have a tremendous chance, but I think Go Ahead Eagles are going to pip them. I think with John Statham and the settled squad that Go Ahead Eagles have got, with the likes of Paco van Moorsel, who also has experience at Eredivisie level. A lot of people criticise Statham for stepping down from the Eredivisie to the First Division, and he said no. He said, I used to play for Go Ahead Eagles. I love this club, and to have an opportunity to be manager of this club is tremendous. And I think his experience, because Heracles had their moments under him in the Eredivisie, I just think that I think Go Ahead Eagles will eventually pip him. But I think you have to credit Henk Fraser as well for coming back after a difficult period at Vitesse, where he was written off. Naturally, having success with Vitesse, with winning the Dutch Cup as well, and then having a difficult period afterwards. But I think he's done really well to come back. I mean, this is the oldest club in the Netherlands. Everybody loves Sparta Rotterdam here. You know, everyone's got respect for Sparta Rotterdam. When they get promoted, it's always a good feeling. I think they'll be well in the mix right to the end. It's just my personal opinion that Go Ahead Eagles will pip them to the post.
For me, I think, you look at the Sparta Rotterdam squad, it's a mixture of Eredivisie players and some great youth talents. They're a great side to watch because it's like the second coming of Royce and Drenthe. He's been excellent this season so far in Sparta. It's great to see him doing well at a cup finally after years of disappointment. Got Lars Veldwick up front and a couple of really, really strong youngsters coming through. I think it's a squad that's built for the Eredivisie, and I think they will go up. But this year's meant to be the toughest Eredivisie season of all. You've got the big teams down there, NSA, Twente. I think it's great just to see that Den Bosch are topping it at the moment. 1 point ahead of Sparta and Go Ahead Eagles, and I think they're a club that usually does mid-table to bottom half, and you never know, it could be a surprising year. Fortuna Sittard came up last year, and this year might be Den Bosch that surprises everyone.
Yeah, I think we just want to see Sparta Rotterdam promoted, just so we get to see more of Royce and Drenthe playing in the Eredivisie. We'd love to see him back on the big stage. And I think on that note, I think it's time to end our podcast. So, Mike, James, thank you very much for this podcast.
Thank you. No problem.
You're more than welcome anytime.